So, did you know that Clay Morrow from Sons of Anarchy was married to a Jamaican woman for almost 40 years? Well, rather, actor Ron Perlman was married to Opal Stone, a Jamaican born New Yorker. So, in honor of Loving Week on I'll Tell You What, let's talk all about it. In 1967, Ron was an aspiring actor who was working at his friend's jewelry store in New York. One day, a woman and her friends walked in and she took his breath away. He said this was, quote, the most beautiful girl he had ever laid his eyes on. He gave her a job at the store, which was actually something he didn't have the permission to do, but she accepted. And through talking it over with his friend, he allowed it. At the time, he was just this kid that had a crush on her, and 4 months later, he asked her out on a first date. Coincidentally, on Valentine's Day. They obviously had a great date because 3 months later, they got a place and moved in together. Because when you know, you know. He said one thing he admired about her was that, quote, she seemed to be ready to go all the way and take whatever came. So, as someone who was very much in those early stages of his career, this meant a lot. So, while he was filming the movie Quest for Fire in Europe, he had a few months off in between shooting, so he flew Opal out to see him. Now, they spent 2 weeks traveling throughout various places in the United Kingdom and France. And once they got back home to the United States on February 11th, 1981, Ron asked Opal to marry him. His words were, quote, F it, let's get married. More precisely, for them to get married on Valentine's Day since it would have been the 5th-year anniversary of their first date. Opal was like, how are we going to do that when that's literally 4 days away? He said, well, let's just get the blessings from our moms, take our best friends and closest family, and just go to the courthouse since we're practically married anyway. She responded with, quote, okay, you crazy ass MF. Yes. He found a justice of the peace that was able to fit them in at 1:30 on Valentine's Day, and along with Opal's sisters Janice and Sharon and his best friend Burton Levy and Burton's friend, they drove to the home of the justice of the peace and officially got married on his front lawn. Now, a few years later, when Ron was filming a movie called Ice Pirates, Opal got pregnant. Now, apparently the conception felt very intentional, as she asked him, quote, WTF, what do you think you're doing? You know, she didn't say WTF, she actually said it. She was concerned that they didn't have the money to be parents then. So then Ron's like, let's go for a ride. Takes her up this hill in Hollywood, turns to her, and is like, the right time to have a kid is when it happens. And yeah, they actually were pregnant. They had their first child, a daughter named Blake Amanda, on Saturday, January 7th, 1984. She was born the day after his first performance in this play called Les Tragédies de Carmen. After the play's run ended, which was about 8 months later, Opal and Ron actually decided to move to Hollywood so Ron would have a better chance at his acting career. Now, years later, they would actually go on to have their second child, Brandon Perlman, during Ron's time on the CBS show Beauty and the Beast. Also, around that time, the show was coming to an end, which kind of sucked because right before that, they had purchased this home that they absolutely loved, but it was twice the amount they were willing to spend. Now, hoping for the best, they went for it anyway and closed, only for his show to get canceled literally the next month. But Opal was never stressed. Quote, she acted as if nothing was wrong and another job would come along just as it always had. She truly believed in her man. But look, their marriage wasn't easy, especially then. Ron said the 90s was his roughest decade. They went through a period where they sought marriage counseling and did that for more than half a year until they realized that, hey, we could argue for free at home. However, Ron and Opal would persevere through the good times, bad times, and the in-between for 38 years. But on November 5th, 2019, Ron would file for divorce. By the time the end of their marriage was made public, Ron had begun to see an actress named Alison Dunbar, allegedly. And in 2022, Ron and Allison got married after 3 years of dating. Now, I don't believe Opal remarried, but you can find her on Instagram at Opal Stone Design because, as her name says it, she's actually a jewelry designer. Now, did you know anything about the marriage of Ron and Opal? I recently found out that he was even married to a black woman in the first place a few months ago. Blew my mind. I love Sons of Anarchy. Now, don't forget to follow everywhere you can, especially the Tube of You, because you can watch the entire episode right now over there. Or don't, just come back tomorrow for another episode of I'll Tell You What, where we will be discussing another very prominent interracial couple in honor of Loving Week.